Of course, you have the first right to...
Well, I'm interested to hear what the audience,
Okay.
how they'll respond
Yeah.
to what I have said and what you have said.
Yeah, okay.
I can give my response through questions or something
Yeah,
like that.
okay. Yeah. I just wanted to...
Okay.
I just wanted to continue what you said, just because I thought it was an interesting point, where I noticed too when you spoke. Nietzsche, when he spoke about chaos, didn't mean anything about fate, right?
No.
Because the Greek had that philosophy, but I think you linked it, so in a way it confused me
Well,
too.
chaos is not... The thing is, the notion of chaos is not an ontology. So it's not like the world is really chaos, as opposed to the world is really cosmos. So in a sense, chaos is a negative notion. This means the absence of order. There's no order to be found. And how do you speak about something negative? Now, well, then the concept of chaos is the one that indicates best how to speak about it. But it's not meant as another kind of designation of how the world really, really is. The whole point is that there's no way to speak about how the world really, really is.
Well, that's also absolute position then. If you say there's no way that you can describe the world, you're taking an absolute position.
Well, yes. That's, well, it's interesting that you say that, because skepticism has two varieties. And like you have absolute skepticism and relative skepticism. And Nietzsche's skepticism was of the relative variety. So the absolute skepticism says it's never possible to know what reality is really like. And of course then you can always say, well, how do you know that then?
Yeah.
How do you know it's impossible to get knowledge? Well, do you have a secret, antenna to know that reality can't be known? So what Nietzsche would say is, no, I'm a relative skepticism, which is I know that I don't know. I'm not saying that I could never know. I'm just saying I know that I don't know, and I know that your claims of knowing that the world is a cosmos don't look very convincing to me. And that's the practice of the relative skepticism. This is a bit like Nagarjuna, which is basically undermining all kinds of dogmatic assertions, undermining all kinds of dogmatic positions, without putting in a new position, or without asserting the opposite, or asserting one doctrine or one's own. So,
but still it entails the use of words.
Well, yes,
right?
Unfortunately.
Yes.
Yeah.
You see, if I may be allowed to speak, I think there's a fourth point that should be here.
All right.
Or at least if I were going to speak on these points, I would put a fourth point. That you can't really have philosophy unless you have logic. And logic comes from the word logos, which means words, speech, language. Otherwise you can't communicate. And so language is very interesting. Language is actually, when you get into philosophers like Western philosophers like Wittgenstein, language is actually mystical, just by itself. The fact that I'm here, my vocal cords are uttering some sounds, or I can write language, some squiggles on a page, and it has meaning. In fact, there's some absoluteness, there's some aspect of absoluteness about this meaning, because we can all share an understanding. You see, all of us in this room, by speaking words, we can share a common understanding. So that is in itself, we may just pass over it, don't think about it. But if you think about it, if you stop, it's quite wonderful. It's quite even an everyday miracle.
Yes.
How language works. So logic or logos. And and then I think we get, like you put this question mark there.
Yes.
You see, then you get into all these, different ways of expression. People are trying to express their ideas of this world through words, and it becomes very complex, complicated, and contradictory, and even self-contradictory. Like one of the, in modern philosophy, one of the great advocates of the Nietzschean position is Jacques Derrida, who was a postmodernist philosopher.
Yes.
Now, I don't know if you agree with Jacques Derrida, but he's...
no, I don't.
I don't think so, but he claims to be a Nietzschean too, you see?
Oh, yes.
And, but you see, the point about this logic is that he was once reading an original manuscript of Friedrich Nietzsche, handwritten, and he was reading it and he was going to write a commentary on it. But because he's postmodernist, which means, you can just juggle words and do anything you want and argue any meaning you want. So he happened to find in the margin, Nietzsche had written, "Wo ist meine Regenschirm?" Yeah, where's my umbrella? So he wrote a whole thesis based on this marginal note, and I believe he was trying to argue that that's the true meaning of the manuscript.
Yes.
So, see, these are the kind of things you can do with words, play around with them. But words have, my point is that words have a power of their own. And we, in conveying our ideas, we string them together and we use this power. But where that power is coming from, like Ludwig Wittgenstein, that was for him, that was his major philosophical quest at the end of his life, was studying language and words. And that's why, this is what I mentioned in the very beginning. In the Vedas, the whole Vedic philosophical system is based on the power of sound, shabda. Sound, in other words, language. And the Vedas admit that language has a power of its own. And just like this idea of chaos, so at least in one version of ancient Greek philosophy, you have chaos and order coming together. Language as logos spermatikos, which means the seed of words or the seed of order entering matter which by itself is just chaotic. And the language or the words give form and meaning to our world. Now you can take this relatively or absolutely, you see. You can say, yes, we have a relative, like you said,
yes.
You quoted Nagarjuna. So the Buddhist term is samvriti satya, which means a common truth. And in Advaita Vedanta, they use the term what is their term? Vyakarana, I think it is. Anyway, they have a similar term, because actually these two philosophies are quite similar, Buddhism and Advaita Vedanta. And we're quite far away from them. So,
I know that.
So, anyway, vyavahar, that's the Advaita word. Yes, vyavaharika. So there's a conventional reality which we create mainly through language, through our language. And we set up meanings, but they have no ultimate meaning. It's like you said, man is creating his world. In other words, the only God, in apostrophes, is man himself. If there is anything like a God, it's man, and especially through his words, his ideas expressed through words, gives meaning. But this meaning is not actually the, in capital, with capital letters, the meaning.
Yes.
So that's relative logic,
Yes.
you see. So that's what I felt was missing from the presentation. But still, there is something very mysterious about language, which has been recognized by Western philosophers too. And this is, I mentioned in the beginning, the thing that separates Buddhism from the Vedas, from the Vedic process, is mainly this point.
Yeah.
That the Buddha himself, of course, then you have the same thing. The words of the Buddha, they became the holy scripture for the Buddhists. They became the absolute
Yeah.
logos But he rejected the Vedas as being man-made, as not being, because the Vedas themselves say this language, this vibration is aupauroshaya, which means not made by humans. It is coming, it is a transcendental vibration coming into this world and giving this world an ultimate order. And the order is vibration. It's, I would agree the idea of cosmos is similar. From this word cosmos, you get cosmetic. Cosmetic too.
That's the word these days.
Which means, to decorate yourself in a nice way.
But I think in terms of language, I think Nietzsche and Wittgenstein would, I think, share the view that we often get bewitched by language. So language has a power to bewitch us.
Yes.
And also a worldview has a power to influence our perception and our way of being in the world without us realizing it. It's just, and this is also why I think both Nietzsche and Wittgenstein share their view of what philosophy is, namely to create a little bit more room so that we're not as bewitched as we were before. A little bit more distance, that we realize, wow, this is my interpretation. I have a certain language scheme which affects the way I view the world.
Yes.
So there's a little more room in there to not take it as absolutely true, but to see, hey, there's also room, it also could be another way, there could be other interpretations, other perspectives.
Yes.
And for both of them, that would also constitute a kind of liberation.
Yes, I understand that, and partially I even agree with it, because you see, from the Vaishnava perspective, our perspective, you see, from the Buddhist perspective and the Advaita Vedanta perspective, Maya, or illusion, is absolute. In other words, this world that we're experiencing rests on actually, well, the Buddhists would say shunya, void, nothing. And then the Advaitists have kind of adjusted that a little bit. They say Brahman, but the Brahman is almost nothing. It's Sat, eternal, but it has nothing really you can say about it. So it's almost the same thing. And so they have this idea that illusion is, is also inconceivable. You can't even really say what it is. But the Vaishnava perspective is more logical.
Well, that's good.
Because we say an illusion is mistaking something for something else. Mistaking one thing to be something else. So it admits the existence of different points of view, different perspectives. And they have their own reality. But illusion comes about when you mistake one thing for another. Just like you mistake a counterfeit €100 note for a real one. That's an illusion you can understand. But what that means, what the logic is that there is a reality behind the illusion, you see. And logic demands that. In order to, that you don't get cheated in this world, you have to allow for a reality.
Well, that's what Nietzsche would deny. So that's what he would.
Yeah. So then, this is what we call, this type of philosophy is what we call Mayavad. Mayavad. Maya means illusion. Illusionism. How you go around, you're using words to create a meaning, to create something that sounds interesting, to kind of bring people in, to explain to them something. But then at the end, it's like the left hand, takes away what the right hand is given. No, sorry, it's just words. It's just illusion again. Everything is just illusion. So this is Mayavad. So this is our argument against the Buddhists and the Advaitists, and from your version, the Nietzscheans
Nietzsche
also.
is no Buddhist in that sense, because he doesn't speak about illusion and some kind of reality lying underneath illusion. He questions the whole distinction between illusion and reality. Because as soon as you talk about an illusory reality and a true reality, then you're back in this hierarchical scheme where there's then some...
Well, my position is that as soon as you talk about illusion, then embedded in that is a conception of reality.
Exactly, so that's why Nietzsche doesn't speak of illusion.
But you're speaking of illusion.
No, I'm also not, at least when I speak about Nietzsche, I don't speak about illusion.
Well, you're saying that the world is chaos, and then you can't
not
and you
illusion.
can't really define what that is.
Right. that's
So
not
that
illusion.
means,
Because
well,
illusion
no.
is if you mistake one thing for something else.
But if we're sitting here, I'm just trying to follow the logic of what you're saying. If everything is really simply chaos, then what is this place we're sitting in? Is this the University of Amsterdam, or isn't it? Or is this just a meaning that we have made ourselves? I mean, are we here or are we not?
I have no idea what
You have
this
no
is.
idea. Okay. That's what I mean, Mayavadi philosophy. What the right hand gives, the left hand takes away.
But it doesn't mean that all this is illusory.
Well,
It means we have no idea what this is. And
you see,
everything we say about it is a lie.
this is what I'm talking about, the use of language, Juggle them and give meanings and take them away in the next sentence. This is what I think is happening here.
Well, I must say, if words carry a power, and that power strikes me as a powerful vibration, and that vibration motivates me, then, if it really motivates me, probably has a consequence. Something deep could happen. But how could I ever find out what motivates me, or this vibration? I even have room to hear this vibration. If not in first instance, I have the courage to completely question everything. If I don't allow chaos, as we use that word, within my own thinking system, if I don't go to the length to risk having everything taken away, how can I ever find something that really vibrates in a way that it meets me? Otherwise, I'm only hearing things I've already pre-designed in my mind. So I'll always be affirming things that are part of my collective understanding anyway. So endlessly I'll be repeating something which sounds good, but maybe moves me nowhere. So I'm a big advocate. Yeah. I can't say it in English.
Advocate.
Advocate to risk chaos in order to really hear the powerful vibration in words. How could I ever distinguish?
Well, if what you mean by that is that you have to open yourself up and make room for that vibration, then I agree with you completely.
That's what I mean.
I don't have a problem with that at all.
But
if you have embedded in yourself a presupposition, a pre-assumption
We all do.
that there can be no higher vibration that takes us out of this experience, then I would question that assumption. I would say that is itself an assumption created by the mind.
right, but that's what I would call absolute skepticism. If you would say there can be no higher vibration, because then you already know that it doesn't exist. So
Yes.
the only approach is relative skepticism, to really say genuinely, I don't know. Could be, could not be. And for me, the function of philosophy is to generate that kind of openness, that kind of receptivity.
Well,
where you
that's
hinder as
all right.
less as possible and as bewitched as to the least amount possible.
That's all right. I mean, that sounds reasonable. But I just don't know, because what I heard, you in your presentation of the cosmos, the ordered reality, I mean, it did seem to be a rather sweeping rejection of the whole notion. So, I'm not sure what you're trying to say right now.
I am rejecting that notion simply because I feel it's a notion that's not very conducive to the type of openness that I'm speaking about.
But what if
So in
your
a sense,
openness?
I'm
Here's
rejecting for
a
practical
okay.
reasons.
Here's a question.
Pragmatic reasons.
Here's a question. What if your openness? What if you open yourself, you make room, and by this you confront again a new order, a new cosmos, one that you haven't, in a version that you haven't met before.
Well, anything is possible.
So in other words, you could
I'm
possibly
not an absolute
accept
skeptic. Yeah, yes. I
the
could.
cosmos idea.
Oh yes, of course.
All
I'm
right.
just saying, based on everything I've known and experienced,
Okay.
I reject it. But if I would say it's never possible, then that would be absolute skepticism.
Yes.
It would be nihilism. That would be cynicism. So,
All right. Well, I think that that's reasonable.
so in a sense, and this is I think also what Wittgenstein is saying, in a sense we always lie with language. So the attempt to get it right is not very helpful. It's actually much more useful to see language as a tool.
Mm.
So in that sense, I'm also trying to see if language can be a spiritual tool
Yes.
in order to generate openness and to
Yes.
kind of deconstruct our fixed opinions.
Anyway, the Vedanta position, if I to find the way to enter into that divine realm of language. And so you know, this is a kind of also nihilism to say that language can only be used to lie. You know, that is absolute skepticism in itself. Because here you have something so powerful, language, but why would it exist only to create illusion or lies? Something so powerful, anything powerful that, you know, can be used for good or for bad, or at least in our experience here. Like you know, a powerful car can be used for good. Someone sick has to get to the hospital very quick or they'll die. So you have a high horsepower car, you get them to the hospital just in time. But you can use the same car for something, you know, bad. Kill people with it. So anything powerful, it has potential good and bad effects, and it's up to our choice
Well,
how we
okay.
use it.
This is something that's very hard to discuss because we simply disagree.
Well, at least we can agree to disagree.
Language has a power in and of itself, and I'm saying it only has the power that it has for us, because the meaning it generates for us. Then that's a very fundamental difference. I don't see any way to resolve it actually. It's a kind of fundamental.
Well, if you'll just admit that you have no proof of that position, if you just admit that much.
I do. I think neither of us has any
Yeah, we
proof.
don't have, I admit from the very start, I have no physical proof for you. I have
Neither
no
do I.
physical proof
Neither do I.
for my position. I mean, that I will be very direct about. But there is a mystery to language. I just want to leave you with that. There's a mystery to language, and the Vedic process, Vedanta, is about entering into that mystery. And I'll leave it there.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
And do you consider to add point number 4 to the research?
The point of the logic, you mean? Well, the thing is, because you spoke about it being a relative logic, as opposed to absolute logic, I would assume.
Well, I'm not saying there's not an absolute logic, but I'm saying there is a relative logic too.
So research later, but do you consider to add something, or is still now like no?
Well, first of all, this is not particularly the topic of my research. I mean, it's part of it, but it's not my whole research. But I think it already is part of my research, the whole difference between absolute logic and relative logic. So I do think I do find that a useful way of looking at things. Well, I took 3, but I could have taken 5 or 6 also.
Mm.
So, yeah. Any more questions?
Well, if you want to leave, or did you have to leave? Oh, sorry. I don't know. If you have to leave, you have to leave. But I'd like to continue on the point. Maybe it's tiring right now. But how would you react if I said the power of language is the fact that it's the only way, the the only thing that enables us to communicate with each other. And I think that's the power of language. Can't you, where else could language derive power from? From itself?
Well, again, it's if you really studied, I mean, that's you can create a phrase like that. It allows us to communicate, and then you can put it in your pigeonhole, and just leave it there. But language is a very, very big topic of investigation, also in Western philosophy. I mean, I've read into this area myself, and there are those who have, by reflecting on how language works, there are those even in Western philosophy who have come to a kind of conclusion that there's something very mystical happening here. Because you just can't sum up this communication like that and, okay, now we've explained it. I mean, that's sort of, then you're just ignoring the wonder that, I'm speaking words. And how does this work? Is it the word itself? Is it the sound itself that is giving the meaning? Or is it because this word is referring to something else? But then there's all kinds of problems with that too. You see? There are philosophers who have studied this, whether it's the word itself or it's corresponding, like I say the word airplane, for example. And you immediately know what this word means, although there's no airplane in this room. And this word airplane, it fits, the double-winged airplanes of the First World War. It fits the modern supersonic jets. It fits any kind of airplane. You can apply it. So how does this work? How is this actually working?
I agree this is a very interesting topic, and I'm aware of all the research that's been done about this, but all I'm saying is that I don't see where the mystical power comes from. I mean,
yes, but you do admit that there is power.
Yeah, I do admit that it's very powerful, but that's because we can't do without language. That's why there's so much power. That's why it's so interesting, because we need it.
You need it, yes. All right, very good.
Yeah. So
We need it, but the question is, did we human beings invent language? Have we made this meaning? Because I think that's what he's saying.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yes, I am saying that.
You think that we have devised this language,
Yes.
and we give it all its meaning.
I'm 100% sure.
You're 100% sure.
Well, that's very absolute.
So you're not even a skeptic about it.
That's very absolute.
But if there's a mystical experience, then for me, it doesn't matter if somebody dances or chants or speaks or makes a movement or from the look of his eyes or from anything a human being has, the expression probably carries something of that person being in touch with something else. So I don't feel it's a problem of language or not, for me at least. So in that way language could be powerful and language could be completely manipulative. But if something has to be communicated, which is bigger than language or bigger than form, it will be communicated, won't it be?
But how do you know that there's something bigger than language?
That's a question of experience and assumption, but it is an experience.
That is your experience. Well, I have a different experience.
But the whole notion of the language having a power in of itself is, of course, a very specific notion, which is, for example, in the West, the ancient Sumerians also had this notion that words carried the power of their own. And I guess this is also very fundamental to the mantra
Yes.
meditation.
Yes.
So, it's actually, I have some,
In other words, like our experience of life right now. You see, in physics, there is what's called the macro world and the micro world. And physics doesn't really, they don't have a way to connect the two. The micro world is a world of this, quantum wave particles, which is more or less a form of vibration and energy states of different vibrations. This is what they say. I think it was Heisenberg, German physicist, he called it all potentia. He said it's a great field of potential. This is the micro world, a vast field of potential. And then the macro world, we're having this experience of, sitting in this room and persons. And somehow, according to physics, it reduces down to subatomic, electrons and neutrons in their different energy states vibrating. But how the two connect, there's no explanation for that. So it's a mystery. In other words, there's a fundamental vibration, which is even known by science. And out of that, we're experiencing this. And how it's happening, no one can say. Now, we didn't create that fundamental vibration. You may want to argue that that human beings created the words, the grammar. But there's a fundamental vibration, which is the basis of all of our experience, whether talking or seeing or feeling or thinking. There's a fundamental vibration. You see, the Vedas say that is a language too.
That's a different explanation.
You see, and that fundamental vibration or language or meaning can be expressed also by a human being if he gets in touch with it. So this is why I say language is, or vibration, because we use the word shabda, which basically means vibration.
So
Clarifying concepts.
this vibration would still be the same thing if we didn't say it was a language. If
Yes.
it was another name. But
Yeah.
then that's not the question. I wouldn't deny there being.
But the
some
vibration, you
vibration.
see, is communicating, that vibration is apparently communicating something to our consciousness right now. But how, that is
Not
outside
exactly.
of human experience altogether.
So it's not
I mean, if
exactly.
you accept this modern physical explanation, of course you can be skeptical about that too. You have plenty of reason to be skeptical about modern physics, because that's also pretty mystical. But this is the way they explain things, that there's this micro world, which is basically vibration and energy states and potential. And then there's this macro world. And this is the world of, you want to talk about convention, yeah, they have the conventional, like Newton's laws of dynamics and all of this, but those laws don't apply to the quantum world at all. The quantum world, we have all kinds of
Right.
fantastic things happening, which are
Chaos.
totally out of our experience. Chaos. Some say it's chaos, and
Yeah.
some say it's order. They're divided on that.
Yeah.
Go along with your explanation about the vibration. It makes it clearer why you use this language. Which I couldn't understand before.
Mm. Okay.
Well,
I don't know, what time is it now?
it's,
10 to 10. Well, you stayed longer than you said.
I was having fun. And,
Okay. I'm glad you had fun. I had fun
I hope
too.
you had fun too.
Yes, I did.
I had a